Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The celestial compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Beal. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Beal.
Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to Celestial Compass. I'm Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, and we're coming to you during peak Gemini time, the first week of June, when there's a massive pileup in the sky in Gemini leading to the Gemini new moon of June 6th. But this is very changeable, fast-moving mental energy, and all of it, all the inner planets except for Mars, so retrace, Venus, the Sun, and Mercury are all heading for a containment moment with Saturn that is presaging what's going to happen again at the end of August and the end of December. And part of the every which way aspect of life affects this show immediately, because my announced guests had to reschedule due to illness, and I am incredibly grateful to Alex Miller, Asteroid astrologer, for jumping in on extraordinarily short notice to come back. A brief introduction. Alex is a professional writer and astrologer, author of the Black Hole book, detailing deep space points in astrological interpretations, and the forthcoming Heaven on Earth, a comprehensive study of asteroids, both mythic and personal. His website is alexasteroidastrology.com. I highly recommend that you sign up for his mailing list, because you will get a newsletter every time one of his fascinating articles comes out discussing what's going on in the news, which leads to our topic. This episode is brought to you by the planet Saturn, which rules the law, the courts, and consequences. And so Alex and I are going to look at the astrology of legal proceedings in the news, a historic criminal trial and the conviction that just happened of a former president, the state of the skies on his sentencing day, and a whole lot more. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks for having me on again.
I am thrilled. Everyone's always so happy to listen to what you add to the transit and the general chart forecast, because your take is always fascinating and illuminating and accurate.
Well, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Now, I know you already put one article out on our main topic, but you told me you'd like to start with the trial chart.
Actually, I'd like to just talk about the natal briefly up front.
Please,
because there are things there. I'm sorry?
Please go right ahead. Take it away.
Okay. Bit of a delay here. Yeah, so, as we know, if it's not in the natal chart, there won't be an event for you to interpret. There always has to be that potential there. That seed has to be there to bring these issues up as we progress through our lives. And there are 3 points in particular that I wanted to bring to your attention from Trump's natal birth chart. The first is an asteroid called Durest. It's D''arrest. And generally speaking, it can refer to a cessation, a slowdown, a stoppage, a limitation of some sort. But it often, and actually, if it's in conjunction or if it's in aspect with the sun or asteroid Valentine, it can indicate cardiac arrest. But it often also just manifests very literally as things that, constellate around the legal system and being arrested. Arrest, detention, charges filed, indictments, things of that nature. Up to this point, Donald Trump has been expressing this more on the civil side of things. He's a very litigious individual. He's sued often, he countersues, et cetera, et cetera. That would fall within, broadly within arrest's purview as well. But of course, within the last year and a half, we've gotten to the criminal side of things. And this is something that's been waiting in potential since his birth. And that's because duress is one of the several points in Trump's chart that is at station. Stations occur when a point, from our perspective, appears to slow its motion in the sky, come to a standstill in reverse direction for a period of time before it once again resumes forward motion. These bodies, when they are stationary, create sort of warps almost, or embeds in the psyche that attract a lot of energy. And whatever the point may be, expresses itself much more strongly than it would in its normal function if it's moving at a standard rate. So having duress at station shows a high probability that there will be encounters with the law at some point in the life. And in this particular instance, it's at 24 Libra, which of course was highlighted by the solar eclipse on April 8th, just a week before the trial began. Although he's obviously past the legal stage of being arrested and charged by the time he gets to trial, nevertheless, that activation kind of resets the natal potential for that sort of interaction. The second point is one that I'm sure many astrologers have commented on, but I'm going to add a little bit of my own spin here, which is the Saturn-Venus conjunction that he has at 23 and 25 Cancer. In and of itself, that speaks a lot to business issues with finances and women, all of which come in play into this story. But what a lot of astrologers who aren't using asteroids wouldn't see is that asteroid karma is exactly conjunct that Saturn. And so that means there will at some point in a life be a period of reckoning, a comeuppance, a need to pay the piper and be held accountable for prior misdeeds or positive deeds. You could receive benefit from what you've done in life too. And that, of course, was also highlighted by the eclipse, at least the Saturn karma portion was. And then the final point that I wanted to mention was an exact conjunction in his chart at 16 Cancer of asteroids Nemesis and Bilk, again, activated by this eclipse. Nemesis refers to ruin or destruction, often self-created. And Bilk is named actually for an observatory in Dusseldorf, Germany, but it acts very well in its English language usage as financial fraud or shady dealings, something that isn't on the up and up. So obviously, the eclipse really focused everyone, on these issues for Trump. An issue involving finances with a woman who may be a love interest on some level that affected his career, and particularly the run for the presidency, which is also Saturn. And this is something that has led to legal entanglements via duress and a period of, self-created ruin due to, again, financial dealings that were not on the up and up.
May I ask a question here? Could you repeat again where Nemesis is?
Yes, it's at 16 Cancer, exact with Bilk.
16 Cancer. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's actually the strongest hit from the eclipse. The others are, we usually give up to 5 degrees, I guess most astrologers do for an eclipse. That one's only 3 degrees off the 19 Aries, eclipse point. So that was the biggest hit of the.
And I'd like to also just throw in that the Saturn at 23 and Venus at 25 Cancer are in the 11th house if you use the 29-degree Leo rising chart. In the 11th house, organizations that could be Trump org right there.
Right. Sure.
Or dealing with the American media, whatever. But at any rate, that adds a little texture to it. All right. Well, then this leads really beautifully into the chart for the start of the trial, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, quite a bit. And again, what I always look for first after casting a chart is what's standing still, what's at station, because that's going to give you the most bang for your buck, so to speak. And, the trial, rightly or wrongly, has been characterized by the media as the Stormy Daniels trial. So it probably won't be a shock to you to find that asteroid Storm is at station when the trial begins. And actually, asteroid Daniel, which is one of several that we can use for Daniels, is conjunct the Sun, along with Trumper, which is our referent for Donald Trump. So you got to kind of see that all encapsulated right there. The Sun brings focus. Who's it bringing focus to? Donald Trump. In what is it bringing focus to? The Stormy Daniels trial. And then the stationary storm reasserts that in no uncertain terms. That was actually also angular for the start of the trial, for the start of jury selection. The storm was exactly on the descendant in that moment.
Allies and open enemies for those of you listening at home.
Right. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because what was such a striking feature about this particular trial was that so many allies became, in effect, open enemies merely by giving honest testimony about their interactions. There were several other points at station. Among them, asteroid Stephania. Stephania reflects Stormy Daniels' legal name of Stephanie Clifford. So we're getting yet another reinforcement of her prominence on this situation. And then asteroid Hicks, which is for Hope Hicks, one of those individuals who was still a Trump loyalist, but who, gave honest testimony and actually broke down on the stand, which we'll get to in a minute, because one of the other points at station was asteroid Lacrimosa, which relates to lacrima, which is Latin for tears. So I'm sure Trump was feeling tearful in many instances during the trial, even if he didn't show it. And then the final point of station is asteroid Alvin, which of course is for the DA who brought the case, the Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. So all those points at station, again, give you sort of a thumbnail sketch of what's going on. What's happening? Well, Alvin Bragg, Stormy Daniels' trial. Hope Hicks is one of the prominent witnesses. And it's a kind of a downer for Trump in some ways, as expressed by Lacrimosa. We mentioned that the descendant was at 25 Sag, which of course makes the ascendant at 25 Gemini. And right there's an exact conjunction, which again is something very telling for the circumstances. It's a conjunction of asteroids White House and Ascalaphus. Now, White House, of course, refers to the presidency and to the president in general. And then Ascalaphus is named for a mythic Greek character. When Persephone was abducted and taken to the underworld, she was very unhappy initially, and no one knew where she was, et cetera, et cetera. So during her time there, she really didn't eat. She just didn't feel like it, But one day, she was out in the garden, and she plucked a pomegranate and ate a few seeds. Ascalaphus was the gardener of Hades, and he happened to take note of this. And then later, when Persephone's whereabouts were discovered, Zeus was called in to arbitrate the situation. Her mother wanted her back. Her rapist abductor wanted to keep her. And so Zeus said, I'll tell you what, she can stay. She can return to her mother so long as she didn't eat anything while she was in the underworld. Ascalaphus comes forward and says, sorry, sir, but she did eat these pomegranate seeds. And so therefore Zeus splits the baby and says, okay, 6 months in the underworld with your possible husband and 6 months in the light world with mommy. So Ascalaphus astrologically represents the witness. And that's why the exact conjunction of White House and Ascalaphus on the ascendant is so important here, because as we noted before, so many of these people were Trump people. They were people who worked in the White House or worked for him while he was president, both of which would be covered by White House, the asteroid. So that I thought was a significant moment as well. And then, we mentioned the Sun conjunct Trumper and Daniel. It's also squaring the Moon at the time, which is in exact conjunction with asteroid Niobe at 23 Cancer. Now, Niobe is one of those points that relates to pride and sort of pride going before a fall. Without getting into too much of the myth, Niobe was overly prideful about her offspring and thought they were better than some of those of the gods. And in retaliation, Artemis and Apollo killed all her children, just to kind of make their point. So again, we're seeing an emphasis on pride, which is something we do often associate with Trump. And then in addition, in the mix there, not exactly conjunct, but within orb, we have Achilles, asteroid Achilles at 26 Cancer. Achilles refers to a weak spot or vulnerability, a character flaw inherent in the native that threatens to destroy the native. Asteroid Nemesis, which again is that sense of self-created ruin or destruction. And these, if you'll probably note as I'm listing the degrees, they all conjoin that natal Trump, Saturn, Karma, Venus conglomeration. They're all, within that. The Moon Niobe is exactly on Saturn Karma. So again, a period of being called to account for misdeeds, in the realm of career or business.
And the Achilles asteroid being right up next to Venus and Cancer, money and women.
Right. Two of his big trip-up points. So to continue with the angles on the chart, we have the midheaven is at 0 Pisces, conjunct Damocles, which is that sense of doom or destruction hanging overhead, waiting to descend at any moment, which certainly the trial would have been for him. And that conjoins his natal descendant at 29 Aquarius. So it becomes even more personal with that connection. Something else I thought was astounding when I did the chart initially was asteroid. Part of the fun of this chart was that there were so many asteroids that connected exactly with the names in the trial, And one of them is asteroid Bragg. We've already talked about Alvin. It has an exact match. So does Bragg for the DA's last name. Bragg at 7 Aries is conjunct Devita at 2 Aries and Pecker at 15 Aries. That's David Pecker, lead witness. It's conjunct Clifford, again for Stephanie Clifford. Stormy Daniels is a legal name. That's 10 Aries. It's conjunct asteroid Cohen for Michael Cohen, the fixer who was the one who brought all this to light as to what had occurred there. That's at 11 Aries. Venus, we're talking about women and money again, at 12 Aries. And even Westerhout, which at 16 Aries is one of the other witnesses who dealt with the disbursement of the checks, if memory serves, that reimbursed Michael Cohen for his expenditures in the case. And asteroid Westerhout, as I said, was at 16 Aries. So the fact that they're all conjunct Bragg, which is the DA asteroid, says to me that he's got his ducks in a row. You know, he knows what he's doing. He's got them laid out properly. They're tight. You know, there's no nobody's off the reservation. They're definitely, you know, he knows what they're going to say, and he's got it lined up the way he wants to say it, and he's going to make his case, and he did.
And can I point out that the North Node on that date was at 15 Aries?
There you go. There you go.
That's where Pecker is, right? Where the asteroid Pecker is.
That's right, exactly at 15 Aries. Yeah. And that was a very compelling testimony because he admits to this day he likes Donald Trump. He just told people what happened, you know, and that's always much more compelling than someone who has an axe to grind, you know, coming forward, which may still be a valid testimony, but you know, you always judge their motives. Pecker didn't have a negative motive in this. I noticed at the time also that Thamus and Justitia, 2 more asteroids, I was wondering what they were going to be doing during the course of the trial. Excuse me. Thamus is named for the Greek goddess of justice, and Justitia is named for her Roman counterpart, and actually the root of our word justice in English. So during the course of the trial, both of these points were creeping up on Donald's natal sun. And I saw that they were both within orb for most of the trial, but the exact conjunctions I was interested in timing out. And Thamus conjoined the sun May 9th to 10th. That was less than a month after the start of the trial, so it seemed to me like we were probably not going to reach a resolution by that point, and we didn't. But Justitia, on the other hand, was exactly conjunct his sun at 22 Gemini on May 28th, 29th, and 30th. And at the beginning of the trial, I thought that seems like our likely resolution point. And in fact, that's how it played out. 28th was closing arguments. 29th, the case went to the jury. The 30th was their verdict. And what's also interesting is that on the 39th, it moved on to the 23rd degree, just before they came out with their verdict at 4:20, as if to say, okay, folks, we're done here. Justice has been served. Moving on. So that's about the setup on the start of the trial there.
I'd also like to throw in that the trial started right after the solar eclipse, the Aries solar eclipse at the beginning of April, right. And Chiron and Mercury were at the eclipse degree at the time of the jury selection started, and Mars hit that point over Memorial Day weekend and activated that eclipse.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's all there, like, okay, the ball is rolling.
Yeah. I actually noted, I skipped a point because I was so focused on the asteroids that were involved with the jury, with the witnesses. But there was another point in that cluster, which is a trans-Neptunian object called Salacia. Salacia is the root of our word salacious, and it has to do with, sexually titillating or provocative or, whatever you want to say, information and scandalous type things. And of course, the Stormy Daniels testimony in particular was quite pushing the envelope on the salacious end of things.
That's true.
So that energy was also very focused at the start of the trial. So,
are you ready to move on to the verdict chart?
Well, yeah. Briefly, let's talk about deliberations when they were. I mean, they're almost the same chart, but what's interesting about the differences are the different angles that occurred. So the jury deliberations began on the 29th at 11:38 a.m. That's when it was turned over to the jury to go into seclusion and do their thing. And as I mentioned before, Justitia at 22 Gemini was exactly conjunct Trump's natal sun, and it was in a T square with Saturn, which is accountability and punishment, and as you note, the law, at 18 Pisces, and an asteroid called Veritas at 17 Virgo. So it's on the fulcrum of that T square. Veritas is a Latin word for truth. So whatever comes out of this deliberation, we have a fairly good idea that it's going to be the truth, and that any punishment meted out will be just, based in that configuration alone. At this point, we've also had Mercury and asteroid Trumper creeping up to a conjunction with Uranus. We've got Mercury at 21, Taurus, Trumper at 22, Uranus at 24. And this is also in a T square, because the ascendant for the moment that the deliberations began was 27 Leo, descendant 27 Aquarius. So again, these Taurus points are on the fulcrum of that T square. And of course, those angles very closely mirror Donald's natal ascendant descendant axis of 29 Leo and Aquarius. So, that's definitely pulling him in very personally, again, in this moment where his fate is about to be decided. And on the descendant side, we also have the moon at 24 Aquarius, asteroid Dawn at 29 Aquarius, and asteroid Truth at 22 Aquarius. So the public, the moon, is now being, through the verdict, which is the Trump verdict, which is Mercury Trumper, is about to be exposed to the truth, which is truth, about Donald, which is Dawn. And it's going to be something controversial, and something groundbreaking, something we've never seen before, and that's the Uranus component of it.
Interesting. I did not run that chart. I went straight to the verdict. So fascinating.
Right.
Yeah.
And similar then with the verdict, which came at 4:20 p.m., that was when the judge was notified that a verdict had been reached. It wasn't announced until 5:06, but the actual chart for the moment that it was made known that the verdict had been reached, again shows this connectivity. The ascendant is at 23 Libra, which of course is squaring that Saturn, Karma, Venus proposition and conjoined Durest. And it's opposing asteroid Bragg with Mars at 26 Aries and 23 Aries in the sky. The MC at 27 Cancer is squaring those points, the Bragg, Mars, and also the natal Trump grouping of Saturn, Karma, Venus. Asteroid Dawn is now at 0 Pisces, which, if you recall, was the MC for the start of the trial. And now at its conclusion, we've got asteroid Dawn right there, and still with Damocles now at 5 Pisces. So that sword hanging over his head is about to descend, and that is squared to Jupiter at 1 Gemini, with Karma at 2 Gemini, and the Sun at 9 Gemini. Which again, Jupiter is the courts and the legal system, the deliberative, process of that. Karma again is that paying for our deeds. The Sun brings the focus in the moment, and this square becomes T square when we include asteroid Alvin, which is now at 9 Sagittarius, again for the DA. There's one point at station in that chart, and that is asteroid Daniels for Stormy Daniels. Storm was at station when the trial started. Daniels is at station when it ends, and that is at station from 1 Libra. Giving that thing. From there, it's trying to Pluto at 1 Aquarius, which rules criminality, and that is also an angular point. It's on the IC at 27 Capricorn, and at this point, the Trumper Mercury conjunction has become exact at 23 Taurus, with Uranus still there at 24, and squaring Truth at 22 Aquarius. And these Taurian points all cluster around Trump's natal MC, which is his status, his reputation, his place in the world. That's at 24 Taurus.
Like a wrecking ball. And I want to talk about, let's a second here about the MC. But first, let's take our first break, and we'll get back to this, actually our only break. We'll get back to this topic in just a couple of minutes. Hang on, folks.
Times TV.
Want help with your own celestial compass? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, for Astro Insight forecasts for each week, month, and new and full moon. Want to explore the personal impact? Make a decision? Understand another person? It is possible. Click the Services tab to book a personal session with me. That address again? empowermentunlimited.net.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We are talking today with asteroid astrologer Alex Miller about all kinds of things related to the recent trial and conviction, historic, of former President Trump. And right at the break, Alex, you were talking about this cluster of asteroids and planets on Trump's midheaven. And I wanted to make the point here that the midheaven, if something like that happens on the midheaven, it has ramifications for what happens down in your home and security, because this rattles the whole 410 axis of the chart. And when this happened to me, when only Uranus went across my midheaven, every core aspect of my life changed within about a 6-week period. My best friend moved out of the country. There were the first marriages in my generation and my family of origin, and very quick ones. I lost my job, I lost my apartment, and then my relationship just went. Everything cleaned out within about 6 weeks. So
Wow. Yeah.
this is not a minor contact we're talking about here.
Right, right. And we had Uranus at the time exactly on the MC. So yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So more to come from this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anything else from the verdict chart that you want to talk about?
No, that pretty much covers it. Yeah.
And have you want a chart for the sentencing?
I have looked at it. It's kind of ambivalent. It gives me no pleasure to say this, but it looks like it might be an easier day for Trump than some would like. But we'll get to that last. Actually, let's just talk about what's definitely going on, which is Don and Damocles are still together. So that threat of destruction and devastation is still looming, as is appropriate when you go to your sentencing. And that is, again, an angular point. It's now conjunct the descendant. Don is at 2 Pisces, Damocles at 4, and the descendant is 10 Pisces. And the descendant, or rather, I should say the ascendant at 10 Pisces is conjoined by by Saturn at 19 Pisces, and together they form a T-square with Trumper at 15 Gemini. So he's, again, very, very, very personally tapped into the time of that day. Now that chart is a 10 a.m. chart. I don't know if that'll be the exact moment that proceeding begins. I don't know if that's been scheduled, but it's a standard time for those sorts of things. So I'm not sure how much the angles play into it, but the other placements would be complete. The reason why I say it might be sort of a good outcome from his perspective is what's going on with the sun. The sun is conjunct Nike. The sun is at 19 Cancer. It's conjunct, which actually exactly squares the eclipse point, which is nothing to sneeze at. But it's conjunct asteroid Nike, which is named for the Greek goddess of victory, and it's in a T square with Asteroid, which is the Roman goddess of victory, at 12 Libra, and Fortuna at 19 Aries, the eclipse point. Fortuna, Nike and Victoria both suggest victory of some sort. Of course, you can make the argument, who is it victory for? Is it victory for Trump in getting a light sentence, or is it victory for the people in having, something significant that's applied to this? Fortuna is the one that's kind of going to decide which way the cat jumps here. Fortuna is named for the goddess of fortune, and most people say, "Oh, well, fortunate." Well, not exactly. Fortuna's wheel spins both ways. You're at the top sometimes, and you're at the bottom sometimes, and it's really impossible to say from this placement exactly, where in that spinning of the wheel Trump will find himself. The only clue that I have outside of what's happening on the day is that Sun Nike conjunction is sitting right on top of that natal nemesis Spurlock at 16 Cancer. So, I'm thinking it might not be a great, outcome for him, but it's just kind of could go either way at this point. Typically, someone in that position, first-time offender, nonviolent crime, elderly, is not going to receive a great sentence for this because, of those factors and just the general guidelines for people in that position. But what factors in a lot into what decision the judge makes is things like remorse, which Trump is incapable of expressing. I mean, he's flouting that constantly. He's flouted it all through the trial, and he continues to do so. And it may not be the smartest move on his part to continually bash the man who has his fate in his hands and his daughter. I don't know how much professionalism Mershon is going to be expected to display on this occasion. He might just say, hey, buddy, you got it coming. But we'll see on the 11th of July, which is just 4 days before the RNC opens, and presumably will still nominate Trump as the GOP candidate for the president in 2024.
Well, another thing or two about the sentencing chart. What do you make of Mars in Taurus in the 9th house of legal proceedings, right at the midheaven and exactly sextile Saturn?
That sounds less promising.
That to me sounds like a huge fine.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
That sounds like a fine to me.
Yeah. That very possibly could be. Yeah. Which again would be a lesser punishment for the situation. That makes sense. I don't work with houses that much, so I'm more focused on bodies with mass when I do my interpretation. So I have to take them into consideration. But yeah, I mean that certainly fits the symbolism there for sure.
Well, let me throw one more thing in. So Leo's on the cusp of the 12th house, which is a house of confinement, ruled by the sun. You said right. The sun is with Nemesis and ... right?
On his natal Nemesis and Bilk, yes.
Yeah. Well, there could still be something, I would think.
Yeah, sure.
It's an idea, just an idea. All right, where would you like to go from here?
Right. Well, we'll just wrap up Trump with one more thing about the upcoming solar return, which actually occurs on the 13th, the day before his actual birthday this year, because of adjustments and anomalies in the way the celestial clock works. But what something you pointed out to me, which was a house issue that I don't normally notice, is that at that time the sun is in the 12th house of that solar return, and it's conjunct the 12th house ruler, Mercury. So the 12th house is traditionally the house of isolation and things like incarceration and prisons. But it's also in a very tight T-square with, well, it's actually, to begin, Justitia is still conjunct. It's a 28 Gemini, 6 degrees off, but I use 10-degree orbs for things like this. And right there next door is also asteroid Jack Schmidt at 29 Gemini. Now, Jack, of course, represents Jack Smith, which is the special counsel in both the federal cases, the documents case and the insurrection case. So he's not going anywhere for this year. He is definitely, he and Justitia are a tag team here. That they're hanging tough, and they're right on his sun for the whole year. And that's also, they're also very close to the ascendant, which is 0 Cancer. But then the T-square that I mentioned is formed by Saturn at 19 Pisces, which is, again, angular. It's on the MC at 17 Pisces. Saturn is restriction and limitation and loss, among other things. It also represents the presidency. And then in an exact square to the sun, opposing Saturn, is asteroid Knot at 22 Virgo. We could look at that as Trump is not going to be president again. But it's just a general disqualifier, a negator, a negative influence on things. So I wouldn't be very happy if I had a restrictive influence and a negative influence T-squaring my sun in the 12th house of incarceration when I'm going, I've just been, I'm just about to be sentenced on 34 criminal counts. So there's that to be considered. And also, therefore, when in the light of that T-square, you're looking at that Jack Schmidt and Justitia as even more significant, because if he were to win the presidency, of course, those federal cases would go away, either because he directs the new Justice Department to drop the charges or because he pardons himself. So since they're so prominently, they would just be a footnote if that were in his future. So I think that lends support for the concept that he probably will not be successful in his bid to regain the White House. There are, again, stationary points in that chart of the solar return. Damocles, our good friend Damocles. So that there's that threat. It's still hanging there. It's going to be with them all year, and that would again indicate that there are further proceedings yet to come beyond just the simple sentencing, which will occur in about a month. Asteroid America is there. So the opinion of the country is going to factor in very much into his future for that year. And asteroid Hybris is also there. Hybris is named for the goddess of prideful arrogance. And that certainly seems to be an appropriate point to have at station when you're talking about Donald Trump.
Let me throw one other thing in. The moon in the solar return chart is at 14 Virgo, correct? That's what you're seeing?
Right.
And it's in a kind of wide opposition to Saturn at 19 Pisces. Well, right. Jupiter and Saturn are going to square, I think it's like the 20th of August. They're going to square at 17 Gemini Pisces. And then on Christmas Eve, they're going to square at 13 Gemini Pisces. And in both of those cases, that Jupiter is going to fall in his solar return 12th house of isolation and confinement, which could be hospitals also. Could be.
Yeah, the moon is also health. Yeah, sure. But it's also residence. So, he's going to either be in the White House or the big house. We don't know which.
Okay. So do you have a shorty one for us by any chance?
Yeah, sure. We can talk. Do you want to stick with politics, or do you want to do something a little lighter?
Do you have anything quick about Alito?
Yeah, fairly quick. Let me just take a.
Or would you rather? I mean, you call it. You're doing me a huge favor here. What do you want to talk about?
What do I want? How much time do we have?
We have 15 minutes, almost. Just about 15.
All right. Well, we can go over Alito quickly. So yeah, we've all heard the deal, the upside down flag right after the insurrection, which was a flag worn by insurrectionists, and then the Keel to Heaven flag, also used by Christian Dominionists, both flown at Alito residences. And, throwing his wife under the bus for this is a little bit unconscionable, but whatever. It just shows the man's character. So, yeah, there's an asteroid flagstaff, which obviously has application to the story. And its progress through this story is kind of interesting to watch. In the birth chart, he was born April 1st, on April Fool's Day, 1950, which is kind of appropriate as well. And he's got Flagstaff at 6 Pisces. Now, it's conjunct Themis, which is, again, the goddess of justice and has been, Alito's job title for a number of decades. And it's also conjunct Photographica, an asteroid that represents visual imagery, such as the photograph of the upside-down flag. So we've got a picture of a flag at a justice's home, right? What justice? Well, that would be a square to asteroid Samuel, which is Samuel with an E at the end, at 11 Sagittarius. And then there's a T-square with an opposition from Flagstaff et al. To asteroid Saturn. Planet Saturn at 14 Virgo, with the moon at 18 Virgo. So again, we're talking about a resonance. That's the moon angled to things. Saturn is sort of the blowback, the criticism of the situation. Incidentally, as an aside, he also has asteroid Bush conjunct Saturn, and George W. Bush was the man who appointed him to the court, so obviously influential in his career, which is Saturn as well. So then moving on to when the flag was actually photographed, hanging upside down on the 27th of January 2021, we now have Flagstaff exactly conjunct Samuel, with Samuel embedded at station. So again, it's a moment of focus and concentration on this. With Samuel conjunct Flagstaff, I don't think you can really blame it on your wife. It was his choice, I would think. But then this is again connecting to the Justice Department, or not the Justice Department, but the justice system, because that is squared to asteroid Themis at 1 Capricorn, and Photographica now appears at 6 Virgo, which is opposed its natal degree, and it's in a square with an interesting cluster of Juno, which represents the spouse, Enver, E-N-V-E-R, which relates to the French term à l'envers, which means reversed, upside down, and asteroid Not, which is again that negator. So that kind of says to me that photograph of the flag was not something that was created by his wife, the upside down flag. And then when the story breaks, we again have Flagstaff in a significant position. It is semi-square Photographica now, from 8 Gemini for Flagstaff to 28 Cancer for Photographica, and we've got a square from Flagstaff to Not and Envers again, which is sort of a cautionary tale. Don't upend your flag if you're on the Supreme Court, please, because Not and Envers also square Justitia at 18 Gemini. So, Saturn is involved again. There's actually a T-square from that Not Envers to Justitia, and then Saturn is opposing Not from 17 Pisces.
So you mentioned 18 Gemini. Let me throw in again. August 20th, transiting Jupiter at 17 Gemini, squaring Saturn at 17 Pisces.
Right.
How does that lock in? So, does that indicate perhaps some kind of squeeze at that point, something happening here, maybe not?
It could be. I mean, Jupiter is the point that traditional astrologers would look to for the Supreme Court, because it has that affinity. If you're not using Justitia and Themis, that would be the thing you look at. So yeah, it's basically restating the same thing from this situation. So I'd like to hope that he'd have a change of heart about recusal, but I mean, there's no one to make him do it, so I doubt he will. But we'll see. And then let's see. Okay, so here's a cool one. Morgan Spurlock.
Yes.
On May 23rd. Now, I don't know if most people will recognize the name, but you'll probably remember what he's most famous for, which was the documentary he produced in 2004 based on spending a month eating nothing but McDonald's in 2003, during which time he gained 25 pounds and went through a series of health crises based on his diet. That was in February of 2003, and the documentary came out. Super Size Me was the name of it. Came out a year later. It was nominated for an Oscar. He did not win, but again, focusing not just on fast food generally, but always McDonald's, right? So it'll come as no surprise, perhaps, to find that his sun at 14 Scorpio is conjunct asteroid Mictonalda at 17 Scorpio, along with asteroid Stout. Now, Stout is named actually for a brewed beverage similar to beer, but it also acts in its English language usage for fat or overweight, issues with that. Stout's at 20 Scorpio, and these oppose asteroid Morgan, which is Morgan with an O at the end instead of the A, G-O-N, and Saturn, which is career at 18 and 19 Taurus. So you got the sense that he has some very strong personal connection to McDonald's that will impact his weight in Stout and his career. So he's got the personal impact twice through the sun and through asteroid Morgan. And McDonalda kind of follows through the whole progression here. When he starts his trial on this thing, his experiment with this fast food situation, we've got the Sun conjunct Neptune, which is the eventual film, and Morgan again. The Sun is at 12 Aquarius, Morgan is at 8, and Neptune is at 10. But exactly in conjunct the Sun is McDonalda at 12 Virgo. So once again, we're looking at this. That Sun, Neptune, Morgan is also opposing Jupiter at 13 Leo. And Jupiter, of course, is increase, including weight increase, expansion and increase. And that's T squared with asteroid Fast for fast food at 19 Taurus. And if you recall, the 19 Taurus is the degree of his Saturn. So it's whatever he's doing here with this film involving his weight gain from McDonald's is going to impact his career. And also at station, when he starts his trial, is asteroid Hamburga. I'm not making it up. Hamburga. Asteroid Stout is at station. And so is asteroid Golden, if you recall. The McDonald's is often called the Golden Arches. So I thought that was an interesting tie-in. When the film received general release in the U.S. on May 19th, 2004, we have, again, a T-square, Grand Cross this time, of the Sun exactly conjunct Academia at 17 Taurus, opposing McDonalda at 12 Scorpio. The crossbars are Neptune, again, films, at 15 Aquarius, and a conjunction of Fast with asteroid Burger, B-E-R-G-E-R, but homophone of Burger, B-U-R-G-E-R, and Golden again at 8 and 14 Leo. Burger and Golden are exactly conjunct at 14. Now, the Sun Academia shows that the definite potential for an Academy Award, Academia being Academy, nomination. Is he going to win it? Gee, probably not, because he's got that our famous disqualifier is conjunct asteroid Victoria, and they're squared to asteroid Oscar. So nope, he's got the nomination, but he's not going to get the win. And then when he passed, we have asteroid Morgan again at station this time, squared asteroid McDonalda. Morgan at 3 Libra, which actually is conjunct asteroid Burger in his natal chart, and squared McDonalda at 6 Cancer. So there's that final recognition of that. And the Sun at 2 Gemini was also conjunct. The one at station is Morgan with the A, and the one conjunct the Sun is Morgan with the O, and that's at 2 and 4 Gemini. And the trine to Morgan forms a grand trine with Pluto, the modern Lord of Death, at 2 Aquarius, and Osiris, named for the Egyptian god of the dead, at 4 Aquarius. So we see the death reflected in that chart as well.
Can't make this up.
You can't.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about? We've got about 5 minutes.
More.
Good.
Okay, well, I can just belt this out quickly. So I'm kicking myself for not having looked at the chart for the Kentucky Derby before it occurred, because I went in a pile. So Mystic Dan Juan the conductor. Did I get that name right? Mystic Dan. Yeah, I'm trying to look at my notes here. Yeah, okay. It's been a while. Excuse me. Mystic Dan, yes. Won the Kentucky Derby at odds of 18-1. Would have been a nice payout had I bothered to look, but I didn't. So at the time of the running on, what was that? May 4th of 24. 7:01 p.m. was post time. So we've got asteroids that are for both Mystic and Dan. That they aren't exact matches, but we have asteroid Mystic, M-I-S-I-K, and Mystic is spelled M-Y-S-T-I-K in Mystic Dan. So it's a close match there. Mystic is conjunct asteroid Triumph. Asteroid Daniel is conjunct asteroid Champion. Asteroid Daniela is conjunct Nike, the Greek goddess of victory. And asteroid Daniels is conjunct Victoria, the Roman goddess of victory. So, yeah, I really wish I'd looked at this ahead of time and bought a ticket.
That's amazing.
And we don't have time for this, but it actually goes right through from when he was foaled. He had this potential to win, and his rider. I have to mention this one. His rider has been in the Kentucky Derby, I think, 8 times before without winning. But what he has in his chart at station is asteroid Daniel. So that was the key to flip that switch for him. He had that stationary point of Daniel. He's riding Mystic Dan, and he finally wins.
Even a horse race, folks. You can even predict a horse race. Well,
hard enough to look ahead.
Well, thank you. This has been phenomenally interesting as always. I always love learning the extra nuances and the little wrinkles that you tease out of what's going on in the sky. Would you tell people where they can find you and what they can get if they find you?
Yes, it's www.alexasteroidastrology.com. This stuff is posted there. You can go to the archives. There's always a lot on the main page because I leave things up for a while for people to catch up. You can sign up there for the email, which is free. And anytime I post something new, you'll get an email giving you a quick rundown of what's there, and then you can go read the details if you're so inclined. But it'll keep you interested, I think, and you'll certainly have a greater appreciation for the wonders of the cosmos when you see exactly how granular you can get with some of this stuff.
And you have a giveaway or a thank you for people who subscribe. What's that?
Yes, there's a sort of brief explanation of 5 asteroids that could be key in your life, depending where they're placed. It doesn't tell you where they are, but you do have instructions on how to find them, and it'll give you an idea of what those represent for you, and go from there.
Well, I really thank you. I thank you so much for jumping in and always having so much information, and it's fascinating. And I greatly, greatly appreciate you being on today.
Anytime, Kathy. Anytime. I always enjoy speaking with you.
Yeah, well, you'll be back. I will invite you back soon. Get your book written. We can talk about that.
Yeah, it's coming along. I'm hoping to have it ready for publication by the fall. We'll see how that goes. But
okay,
maybe by Christmas we might have it in stores. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, great. All right. Well, everyone, my own forecasts are at empowermentunlimited.net and at ohmtimes.com. The only difference is my weekly reports or weekly forecasts are only at my website and my YouTube channel, Professional Aquarian. So thanks very much. Talk to you again soon.